Alice, weeknights at 6 here on Channel 9.
Love your patches.
Yeah, Talladega last year you left me to go get a loaf of bread.
I have to keep my energy up.
Hi. Hi.
I have to keep up my... Hi. Listen, after I win the race today, I'm going to get together for a little kick the can or whatever.
Hey, Stoker, we got a race to run.
Burt Reynolds as Stroker Race, the terror of the racetracks, and one of 4 new movies and a classic that we'll be reviewing this week at the movies. And across the aisle from me is Gene Siskel, film critic of the Chicago Tribune.
And this is Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times. Now, in addition to Stroker Race, we'll also be reviewing Kirk Douglas tracking a convict on the run in Eddie Macon's Run, also a Brazilian labor movement film called They Don't Wear Black Tie, and we'll offer a little tribute to the great French comedy films of Jacques Tati, films that are enjoying a revival around the country right now. But first, Roger begins with a film we've all been looking forward to, Porky's 2, The Next Day.
I was looking forward to seeing it 10 years from now. Porky's 2 is a continuation of last summer's enormous box office hit named Porky's, and it features the same crowd of immature teenagers in a new series of practical jokes involving sex, crummy teachers, and square adults. Now, here's a scene that I think pretty well captures the spirit of this terrible movie.
You guys are just jealous because I ruined Wendy for everybody else.
Oh, no.
Now that she's had me, what's wrong?
Yeah, well, that's not what she told me.
Well, what did she tell you?
Ask her, Pee-wee. Here she comes.
Yeah, I can hear her panting from here. Look, man, when they've been had by Pee-wee Morris, they stay had. I mean, they can't keep their hands off me. And you guys better watch out, because when she sees me, you're liable to get caught in a stampede. Watch this. Hi, boys.
She's in a frenzy,
Oh, she's rabid. She didn't see me. She didn't know I was here.
That's what she said about you last night on the bus?
Oh, man, the girl's my slave.
That kind of an attitude toward women absolutely makes me cringe. It makes my skin crawl. If the whole movie were like that, it'd be bad. But unfortunately, this whole movie is worse than that scene. Maybe the filmmakers were self-conscious about the attacks that critics made on their bubble-brained subject matter in the last movie, because anyway, this time there's a ridiculous and distasteful plot that makes fun of revival preachers, racists, and the Ku Klux Klan. This movie hasn't earned the right to wrap itself around those issues and to take those noble attitudes when it has such a smarmy attitude of its own. The movie ends in a big scene where hundreds of Indians watch while a bunch of Klanners have their heads shaved and then are forced to walk nude into a revival meeting. That scene is pretty sick, but meanwhile, a local girl is embarrassing a crooked politician by pretending to vomit into a fountain at a restaurant, while really what she's doing is squeezing split-piece soup into the fountain out of her falsies. Now, I'm only providing these details in the first place so you know what I mean when I say that this movie is completely beneath contempt. There is nothing that this movie won't stoop to get a joke.
I think just reading the synopsis is enough to tell you. I mean, when you talk about scenes like that, it's pretty bad. And I really don't like the aspect that you mentioned, first of all, which is the business with the Klan. They show the Klan. How do they show the Klan? They beat up an Indian boy. How do they beat him up? Just a little black eye.
Comic buffoons.
They don't show what the Klan does, which is kill people, hang people. This is comedy Klan. This is from Archie Bunker's house. This is really, that's sick to do with something like that.
And then the whole deal with what they do with the Klan when they shave their heads using some perversion of a Jewish ritual.
Right.
It's, you know what's sick about it? It's anti-Semitism masquerading as anti-racism.
I know what you're saying.
It's sick underneath the sickness. This movie is corrupt from one end to the other.
We didn't like this picture. Coming up next at the movies, Burt Reynolds in his latest car racing escapade.
Ladies and gentlemen, Stroker Race!
Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention? Hey, okay, I got about you. Entertain him.
No. Now, this may be hard to believe, but I think our next film, Stroker Ace, is quite simply the worst movie of the year so far.
It's worse than Porky?
You figured that out. Worse than Porky's, too. Burt Reynolds, who seems to have given up trying to make good movies, stars as Stroker Ace. That's his nickname, a race car driver from Texas who foolishly signs a contract with the sponsor of his car that requires him to promote a string of fried chicken restaurants. The only part of the deal he likes is that Lonnie Anderson is the head of promotion for the restaurant company.
Hi, ma'am.
This is Lugs Harvey. Miss,
Pembroke Feeney, Chicken Pit Advertising and PR Director.
How do you do?
How do you do, Mr. Harvey?
Pembroke Feeney.
That's her real voice, too.
Well, boy, she sure is pretty.
Lugs Harvey is my chief mechanic.
Oh, well, then you'll be interested in this, too. I was just about to show Stroker our gross volume chart. Now, as you can see, our sales have steadily increased since 1967. At one point, our sales actually matched that of the Colonel's, until a rash of sympathy purchasing broke out following his death.
Well, that's very interesting, Miss,
Feeney.
Pembroke.
whatever. And I'm sure you're very good at your job.
Oh, thank you.
See, I ain't gonna do but about 2 personal appearances this year. And as for commercial, I might do 1 if it's real classy. And I want that fastest chicken in the South taken off my car.
I'm sorry, that's quite impossible. You have a whole schedule of personal appearances. And, of course, it's my job to travel with you to make sure everything is properly arranged.
Travel with me?
Uh-huh.
Excuse me. Well, then, we'll be sharing a room, right?
Oh, no, we couldn't do that.
Why not?
Because we're not married.
What a little kidder. What's that got to do with it?
Well, I couldn't share a room with a man I'm not married to.
You good?
No.
You never been married?
No.
Well, that makes you a, what do you call it?
A virgin.
Well, yes, I am. I mean, sure I am. I'm single.
Well, I think that's nice.
Thank you.
You would.
You know, if you were in that hotel room, wouldn't you want to, like, quietly walk out and shut the door?
Yeah, see you later, guys.
Yeah, there are episodes of Hee Haw that are more lively and more funny and more sexy than that dribble. In addition to lame-brain sex, Stroker Ace also contains, of course, a lot of high-speed car chases. And here's one of the many of those chases with restaurant chain owner Ned Beatty and his chauffeur Bubba Smith chasing Reynolds and his mechanic Jim Neighbors. Reynolds is trying to get himself fired for promoting Beatty's restaurants.
See what he's trying to do, Arnold? He's trying to lose us. Thinks if he makes me mad, I'll fire him.
Yes, sir.
I ain't gonna fire him. If we lose him, I'm gonna fire you.
Me?
I ain't gonna get mad.
He's gonna fire me. He ain't gonna fire you.
I know you ain't a race driver, but hang in there, Arnold.
I got it.
Make me mad.
He's gonna fire me.
He ain't gonna fire you.
Don't lose him. You better grab something that floats, boss.
You know, you see water in a Burt Reynolds movie, and you know a car is going in it. A slow-motion car crash in the water. We've seen that hundreds of times, and it continues to get more and more boring. I wanted to leave this movie, quite honestly, by the time the opening credits were over. What's wrong with Stroker Ace? You name it. It's not funny. The sex jokes are old. Lonnie Anderson isn't given a chance to act, and Burt Reynolds doesn't even try. The stock car footage has been lifted right from TV. You can see the grainy little lines. The races between Reynolds and the other drivers aren't the least bit realistic or exciting. You can easily see where they're only going 30 and 40 miles per hour. This is amateurish. It reminds me of Cheech and Chong's kind of comedies where they really trash their audience. Burt Reynolds isn't living up to his own audience.
Burt Reynolds makes 2 kinds of movies, it seems to me. Movies about lifestyles, like Best Friends in the end, and then movies which are just an exercise of his lifestyle. I have the feeling whenever he gets together with Hal Needham, who is the former stunt coordinator who has made this movie and the Smokey movies and Cannonball Run, they just go down to the South and have a picnic, and he gets his old pals around and his current girlfriend, and they do another retread of these dumb car jokes. You sit there and you think, everybody on this movie gave up before they made frame one.
Yeah. If these are his home movies, is what you're really saying,
yes.
then, show him in his home, not for public consumption. I'll tell you one other thing. Seeing Ned Beatty, a fine actor with Reynolds, I thought of a film they made 10 years ago, Deliverance. Boy, have they come a long way since then. Why doesn't he make a good movie?
A long way in the wrong direction. Our next movie is Eddie Macon's Run, a thriller about an escaped convict and the prison official who tracks him down. The convict is played by John Schneider from The Dukes of Hazzard. The lawman is Kirk Douglas. Schneider's really a good guy in this movie. He was framed on a bunch of phony charges, and he only escaped from prison in order to be with his wife and son. It's really heart-rending. But for Douglas, this is a personal vendetta because the last time Eddie Macon escaped, he gave Douglas a nasty scar up on the eyebrow. Here's a scene where Douglas surprises the escaping convict in a motel room.
Game's over. You lose. Don't do it. Those cowboys will take you dead or alive. Nice to meet you, Miss Buck. My name's Marzak.
She's not part of this.
Is that so?
I forced her to bring me here.
Yeah. She looks like an innocent girl. Sit down. Sit down. I had it all figured out every inch of the way. I let those cowboys run around playing games. I waited for you to send me a postcard.
I think you better just kill me right now. Because there is no way I'm going back with you.
No?
No. I've done too much time already for nothing.
You're breaking my heart.
You lose, Marzak. I beat you.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I made it out, and I'm staying out. So why don't you go ahead and pull that damn trigger and get it over with?
You through?
Go on, do it. Go on!
Don't!
You wouldn't think a veteran like Kirk Douglas would fall for the old water pitcher over the head routine, but there are a lot of things in this movie that are hard to understand. That was Lee Purcell as the woman in that scene. She plays the niece of the Texas governor, and she agrees to help Eddie Macon escape for a brilliant reason, which she explains. She says it's a slow Wednesday. The movie tries to be more than a routine thriller, and it keeps interrupting the action with heartfelt and bittersweet flashbacks, which only serve to bring things to a dead halt. Every time something begins to happen, something stops happening. A big chase scene through a cemetery doesn't help much, and the ending is so predictable that I called it an hour into the film, and I was right.
Well, of course you would be right. I mean, the whole thing wrong with this movie is these flashbacks, which keep building up what a good guy, this criminal on the run is. Well, now, if they're telling us constantly what a good guy is, he loves his wife, he's got a child that has a fatal illness, perhaps, then that can only lead to one conclusion, which anybody can figure out. And if you got a good guy, and if you got we've already said it in effect, and if you got a good guy like Kirk Douglas playing the role, then you know what's going to happen at the end of this picture. The movie's over.
What I object to is what I call the obligatory scenes, and we just saw one. I call it the scene where he makes the mistake of gloating. Now, this scene is always in all the James Bond pictures. They have Bond cold. In this case, he has Schneider cold. He's got him. He's got a gun on him. He's won.
I hate that, too.
What does he do? He sits down and explains.
I know. I hate
You made the following mistakes. I made the following brilliant conclusions. Therefore, you're wrong. And then he gives him time enough to escape.
I know.
You just know
this is a made-for-TV movie, and I may be insulting made-for-TV movies by saying that. It's mediocre at best. Coming up next at the movies, a 30-year-old French film that is a whole lot funnier than any of the new movies on this show.
Our next movie is a new old movie, a re-release of a classic French comedy made 30 years ago by a whimsical, pipe-smoking genius named Jacques Tati. The name of the movie is Mr. Hulot's Holiday, and it's one of those films that never seems to grow old. It's part of a revival festival of poor Tati films that's being booked into art theaters around the country. And in Mr. Hulot's Holiday, Jacques Tati stars as a quiet little man. Well, he's not so little. He's kind of tall.
Quite tall man.
Only has to touch something, and it goes completely wrong. Here's a great scene. Tati goes fishing on vacation. the inspiration for Jaws right there.
It's a direct steal from, I mean, the Jaws thing from Spielberg. I wonder if you saw this picture. Fabulous.
Possibility. Mr. Hulot's Holiday is not a silent film, but it could almost just as well have been. Almost all of the jokes are visual, and the soundtrack is used only for music, for funny sound effects, and for an occasional nonsensical remark by one of Hulot's fellow tourists. The movie takes place during a long vacation at the beach, a holiday that Hulot makes miserable for everyone else by his real knack for being in the wrong place at the wrong time with the totally wrong thing in mind. Jacques Tati is already famous, but he's not as famous probably as he should be. And if you like the comedies of Buster Keaton or Charlie Chaplin, Tati belongs on the same list, and I think it's great. The four of his movies have been packaged together for this traveling Tati festival.
I think it's wonderful, too. In our town where the films are playing, the original idea was one a week for 4 weeks. The first one, this Mr. Hulot's Holiday, is so good it's already been held over for a second week. So I hope this thing gets really played around. I want to quibble with you just one thing. I like the film very much, but I love the sound effects. They're limited. This movie makes us remember what it's like to be quiet in films. And so when we hear a swinging door and it disturbs things, every little sound disturbs something. It's just marvelous.
I think the point I was trying to make is that they don't use dialogue.
Dialogue, right.
Gags or puns or funny lines or anything. It's all just sound effects and things like
Which
that.
is a big change from this television age of comedy that we live in now. Animal House, everything pie in the face, everything explicit, cutting from one thing fast to another.
This movie uses patience. There's a fabulous scene where he has a kind of a fly swatter or something like that under his arm, and he's trying to straighten these pictures. And every time he turns around, he knocks another picture loose, and meanwhile, he doesn't know it, but there's this bare rug on the floor that's gotten attached to his heel. And then he looks down and he thinks he's being attacked by a bear, but the whole thing takes about 4 minutes to develop, and it's perfectly timed physical comedy.
Quiet and restrained. That's a real rediscovery of the movies in this picture. Coming up next at the movies, a Brazilian Archie Bunker and his strike-breaking son-in-law. Our next film is They Don't Wear Black Tie, a political and personal drama from Brazil, a nation that has produced a lot of fine films lately, but They Don't Wear Black Tie isn't one of them. This film is so amateurish at times, in fact, that if it were an American film, we'd laugh it off the screen. It's the story of a father and son, both laborers, who wind up on different sides of a picket line, with the father supporting a nationwide strike and the son arguing that, hey, he has the right to cross the picket line if he wants to and go to work. The whole labor battle in this film is handled sort of like a high school filmmaker might do it. A little more sensitive is the love story between a young worker and his girlfriend, and here the father and son talk about the boy's love affair and their own relationship.
Sabe, pai, não liga porque eu disse, não. O senhor tá certo, eu tô meio perdidão, né? Muita responsabilidade, assim. De repente, pra mim, a gente acaba dizendo o que não pensa, falando demais o que não quer. Que nem de porra, né?
Não se preocupa, não. Esquece. Eu já esqueci.
Eu respeito e admiro muito o senhor.
Opa. Faz tempo que eu não vi uma declaração dessas.
Tá ouvindo agora?
Você é um bom moço. Cabeça quente, mas um bom moço. Maria tá grávida, não tá?
Tá sim.
Eu tinha certeza, viu?
We figure out she's pregnant an hour before the father does. That's a sweet moment, though, nevertheless, one of few in this picture. Sometimes I think films like this get a favorable review from critics around the country because, well, the picture has its heart in the right place and it's a poor country. Well, I don't know if there is any place for charity in criticism. I didn't care for this film at all. And a test that I use on this sort of thing is just what I said before. If this script were filmed in the United States this way, first, it would never be made. Second, if it were made, it would never be released. I was bored stiff. I thought the filmmaking was amateurish.
I was really disappointed. One of the things that bothered me was that I've seen so many good Brazilian films in the last 2 or 3 years, like Bye Bye Brazil and Peixoto. Chica, films that are so filled with life and with the energy of these people and with their spirit that in this film, I was kind of appalled by the fact that the typical shot has everybody kind of lined up in kind of stiffly, mouthing tired old platitudes to each other, you know, lines out of the labor movement of the 30s, without any passion, without any energy. I'd like to see a picture about the Brazilian labor movement, but not, as you very well put it, this movie that seems to be like a high school civics class.
Not only that, I fault the filmmaking. The good Brazilian films that we've named can stand with any movies being made around the country on a visual level. This film, I use high school because it was shot in the labor fighting scenes. We've seen labor fighting scenes in streets in many, many films, but never done as badly as this. It really looked like a first grader or something's attempt at lining people up and showing conflict. Bad filmmaking.
The first thing they needed was a good traffic director, right? So to recap the main movies on this program, both Gene and I turned down our thumbs for Porky's 2 the next day. That was the sequel that plays the Ku Klux Klan for laughs. We both also hated Burt Reynolds as yet another good old boy in the race car farce Stroker Ace. Our thumbs continue to point downward for Eddie Macon's Run, starring Kirk Douglas chasing TV's John Schneider. But a change of direction, thumbs up for the revival of Jacques Tati's French comedy classic, Monsieur Hulot's Holiday, made in 1952. Be on the lookout for the Jacques Tati Festival when it plays in your town. And finally, 2 more negative votes for the Brazilian political drama They Don't Wear Black Tie.